Good morning and welcome to the Project Solve Implementation Series 1 webinar. My name is Doug Martin and I'm the State Construction Systems Engineer in Tallahassee. First of all, there's a good number of topics that we're going to cover, and to let everyone know, this is going to be like a high-level overview of the implementation plan and the overall functionality of the collaboration sites. Exactly what is Project Solve? Well, we named it PSSP because that stands for Project Solve SharePoint. Project Solve is a product that was produced by Parsons Brinckerhoff to control the collaboration of project information between the stakeholders on a project. The original product of Project Solve was a standalone system, and when FDOT went out to bid to find the product that they wanted to use for this endeavor, what we did is the following. We wanted an off-the-shelf dynamically configurable tool. We wanted all of our stakeholders on the projects to be able to access it, to submit and share information. And as I already said, it's provided by Parsons Brinckerhoff because they are the ones that won the bid when we went out to bid for this product. One thing to note is all of our project collaboration sites will be hosted outside of the FDOT network in the cloud. So in order to gain access to the product, every user has to be issued a user account on the Active Directory at Parsons Brinckerhoff. And there's methods and tools to do that. Another thing to make note of is the enhancements are done by our own internal people, which will be your district champions across the state. And we'll go further into that also in the webinar. And one of the neatest features about this whole thing is that all of the sites are accessible by mobile devices. And as long as you have a browser on that mobile device, you can get to the site. And you probably have experience working with mobile devices and realize that sometimes it's difficult to work with screens so small, on a browser on a mobile device, but it works, just to give you that. What we have here next is an example of what one of the project sites looks like. So all through the entire Project Solve system, every project site will have this launch screen, and that we're hoping to keep them all the same. The things that might be different would be the pictures that flash for the project, because there's a slide flash for the project that the project creator can set up pictures that are taken along while the project's being built, and they would flash here like a slideshow. There's particular links in here that are relative to the specific project that you're looking at, but for the most part, they're all the same. And I want to point out that if you log in as a contractor instead of an internal person, this block of information will go away on the site. Here's an example of when a contractor logs in. You see this whole thing go away over here. That's primarily because the bulk of those things under the CEI block are done by our internal people, not by the contractor. Okay. What's the plan? Well, most of you probably have already heard that the specifications relative to paperless construction environment, which is e-construction, are going to go into effect July 1st for all projects that are being let at FDOT. This means that it is our intention to implement Project Solve at the same time, because the overall goal for this entire endeavor is to get ourselves in a paperless environment for construction. And if you wonder why we're doing that, there's been many peer exchanges across the country, and Florida's been involved in a lot of them. And some studies were made, and for example, Michigan, based on the size of their program and how many jobs they build a year, were able to determine approximately how many pieces of paper they will be saving by going to a paperless environment in construction. Their number was 6 million sheets of paper a year. So if you take that number for Michigan, their program size is about half that of ours, and you apply that to our program size, then you're talking about 12 million sheets of paper per year that we're shuffling and sending and scanning and signing and all of those kind of things. So the plan is that as of July 1st this coming year, or this year, we want to try to move everything to a paperless environment. I guess you wonder, how on earth are we going to manage all of this and keep it so that we're consistent, predictable, and repeatable across the state? Because SharePoint is extremely dynamic, and you can do just about anything you can dream of with SharePoint. And because this collaboration tool is based on SharePoint, we've got a tremendous ability to move and shape our collaboration environment as time goes on. And we hope that as time does go on, we want to hear, good ideas from the users in the field and bring them to the table for people to talk about and say, is this something we should do on all projects? Well, for that reason, we decided to form a group called the CPR Group. The CPR Group is made up of members from all the districts, plus advisors from here at the central office. We can bring in IT people if we ever need to. And what they're charged with is keeping the cross-district differences within the sites as much to a minimum as possible. So, because we want the contractors that work across regions and also the inspectors, the CEI folks, to see the same thing when they go from District 2 to District 4 or from District 3 to District 1. No matter where they are in the state working, they need to see the same thing and be consistent. Right now, the current chair of that group is in District 2. It's Rusty Cheshire, and I want to tip my hat to Rusty because that's a very difficult job to do, because you're trying to keep 8 different districts, including Turnpike, all on the same track and going in the same direction. And that's a very difficult thing to do here at FDOT. Now, if you have ideas or if you want to ask questions specific to the system, you can send ideas and questions to the email address at the bottom of the screen. Okay? Now that's the CPR Group. Okay. The next topic is security group provisioning. What that means is, if anybody's familiar at all with SharePoint, SharePoint has the ability to constrain or expand group authorities for a SharePoint site and give certain areas more authority than others and certain areas less. Seeing certain things like we did on that first screen that I showed you, that example, contractor groups would only see what they see, and our project administrators would see what they needed to see. So the security group provisioning is something that's a little bit difficult to get your head around, but we've tried to automate it to the point where it would be less difficult to manage. So here's how we're doing that. There are people that need to, all across the state, that need to be able to get to the project or to get communication from the project, and that would be a statewide entity, like somebody at the state materials office or somebody at the central office that needed to review a particular supplemental agreement or something. The example of the statewide provisioning list would look like this. This is the SharePoint group that belongs to the project, and this is the user that belongs in the group. Okay, so for example, State Materials Office Asphalt Lab is David Webb, so forth and so forth. A district staff would be relative to each district. Like, for example, you have asphalt engineers in every district, so those would be different for a project site that belong to a specific district. And the district admins in your area update their provision list like this: district office final estimates reviewers, district director of operations, so forth and so forth. Once these lists are compiled and placed on the district site that each one of the projects will be belonging to, then that provision list can be used when a project site is initially set up. This is one of the most laborious tasks that a person in the district would have to do. So by doing it one time, you can then have it done for all of the new projects that are coming down the pipes. So when a new project comes, Parsons is actually going to do those provisions for us based on what we have already put in these lists. So when the site's created and you receive a new project site, then this will be already done. The provision groups will be filled in, and the only thing left to do for the site-specific information is the persons that are doing the work on the project site at the site level only. This would be like a project administrator. He may have several projects, but he would only be working on the projects that he's been assigned to, and he wouldn't be able to work on a project that somebody else had in a different district. So when PB creates a site, all of the people are provisioned. Then the only thing left to do is do the local site users. Okay, how do contracts get into Project Solve? Here we tried to automate that as well to make it less laborious on the districts. In the pre-construction system where we advertise lettings and then the awards, let me pull up this little diagram. When a contract reaches the awarded status in pre-construction, that used to be LAS, PES, and all of those, now it's called pre-construction. We have a program that runs on the batch reader that runs every morning and looks for contracts that hit the awarded status since the last time it ran. It pulls the metadata relative to the contract and emails that information to a list site at the district level for that contract. So that's like a spreadsheet. It's like an Excel spreadsheet that gets sent to the district. Now, when that spreadsheet hits the district, it automatically notifies the administrators of the district, which is the Project Solve administrators, that they have a new request for a project to be put in their district. What they would do is edit the list that gets created when that stuff hits the site and reply in there that they want to create the site. And it said, and you would edit the record and say, yes, please create site. Once they edit that record and put yes in there, then Parsons Brinkerhoff is notified, and they take the steps. They have a set of site setup instructions that they follow as well, same as us. And they create the sites for us and then send a notice to the district admin that it's been created. After they're created, then the district administrators, along with the project administrator, get together and finish out the setup list for that project. Once the project site is set up, then everything is good to go. And the sites come with the workflows already built. So persons that are managing these sites don't need to worry about how to build workflows and all that kind of stuff. They just need to know how to put documents in the system, just like they would if they were sending it in an email to a person on the other end. Another thing to make a note about is that each contract site is a standalone collection, which means they don't communicate with each other. Once that site is created, it stands alone by itself, and a person has to have access to that site to be able to get into it. And we'll talk about that further down in the webinar. Okay. The next topic is site creation. This is just a repeat of what we just talked about. Okay. Let's talk about site setup. Whenever you're talking with your folks in the field, when you're doing the pre-construction meeting and you're gearing up for the use of this product and telling the contractors how to do it and what they need to do, you need to give them a link that tells them how to set up an account. And I can envision that from the get-go, in the you know, in the first months that we're doing this, you'll have a lot of contractor personnel that need to have accounts set up. But as time goes on, these accounts don't go away. So the next time they win a contract, they would already have an account in the system. They would simply get added to the project. They may have to reset their passwords or something like that if they hadn't been working for a while. But for the most part, as time goes on, this task will become less important. But the way they would go set up an account is the following. I'm going to walk through the whole, you know, how to get there, but you can give them a link that takes them directly to this place where they need to set up an account. Okay, so this is the internet. Let's go to Offices, Construction, Programs and Services. There's a title group called E-Construction. And under E-Construction, you see Project Solve. This is the new user account creation page right here. Okay, this is what the screen looks like. And the persons would fill in their information. And what you want to tell them when they're creating their account is to put F. in this slot right here. That way we'll have a good idea, you know, since Parson has more than just F. as account holders, that we would know that this person is logging in for F. projects. Okay, so when you create the account and submit it, and you have to put this code in, the submit button will send an email to the person that's requesting the account based on the email that they put in. Once that person responds to the email and confirms the email address, it sends a notice to the Active Directory managers to create an account for that person. And we're doing that here at the central office, and plus Parsons is doing that to assist us when we get overloaded with incoming requests. Okay, this is a demonstration of how you would enter a person into a security group on a project. Remember we talked about the provisioning and how a person gets added to a security group on a particular project. This demonstration shows you how to add a single person to a security group on a project. For this example, we'll go to Site Settings and go to Site Permissions. Locate the group that you want to add the person to, and I picked Contractor Contributor. And I have a user called contractor.test that I'm putting in here for demonstration. But this could be anybody in the Active Directory. If you uncheck that checkbox at the bottom, they will not receive an email that they've been added to the project. But if you leave that checkbox, they will receive an email that they were added. These are just kind of some setup features that has to be done at the local level after a project site's created. There are probably 19 steps that have to be done on a project, and this is just a few of them to give you an idea of what we're talking about and what effort it would take to do it. Whenever you set up the project site with the document library, you can set the email address for that project documents library so that the contractor can email submittals straight to the project. By doing that, he doesn't even have to log in to Project Solve. He can just put an attachment on an email and send it to the job. But the way you set that email up is this. You go to the project documents library and you click on the library button at the top. And then you click on library settings. Now, inside here, what you want to do is click on the incoming email settings and type yes. Now, here, I put in webinar demo for the email address, but this would actually be, let's say your contract number was T3549. That's what you would put there, the site name. and you want to open it up so that email can be sent from any user at the bottom right here. That's about the only settings that you would want to change here. If we go into a more detailed review of how this setup is done in a later series, you'll learn more about that and the reasons why we picked the choices we picked. After that's set up, you click OK. When you do that, it creates an email address right here, and you can go up there and copy that so that you can paste it in a notification to the contractor or someone that needs to be able to send documents to this project. So just go up and copy that and then go paste it in a Word document or something so you'll have it to send to them. You can come back and get that at any time too. Another cool feature about the setup is to build all of the pre-filled forms that you need for the contract and put them into the library for use on that contract. I know you've gone to the Forms and Procedures page to pull forms and pull them down and fill them out and put all the information in so that you can submit them. What we tried to do with the CPR Group and the Innovator team for paperless construction was to identify those forms as much as possible that are used most frequently and put those into this program that pre-fills them and sends them down to the site for you. Here's an example of how to obtain those forms and how to put them into the project site. So you go to the InfoNet. Let me stop right there and remind everyone that this is an application that runs against the databases behind our firewall in order to pull the information out that's necessary to put on those forms. So when you run this, you need to get behind the firewall through the VPN or something to build this. So you would go into Offices and then pick Construction on the internal site, then go to Cars, and then in Cars pick Construction Forms. All right, from here, contract number in this slot right here, and you have two choices. You can send to me, which you email the things back to you, whoever's running this application, or you can send to site. And if you send to site, that implies that you have to set up an email address for the project form library as well. Because I showed you how to set up an email address for the project documents library. The project forms library is a different library and it has to have a different email address. So if you pick send to site, the application is going to develop that email based on the contract number that you put in here. To keep things simple for my own purposes and for this demonstration, I'm going to send it to me because I'm using a contract site that's not a real contract, and if I ran it against that, it wouldn't bring anything back in the forms. So I'm sending it to me in order to do this demonstration. So you click the contract number, you click Select All, and it fills in all of those form numbers. You click Create Form, and then the application responds and says Form Sent. And if you guys know Mike Johnson, you know that this was done pretty correctly because Mike's pretty good at what he does. And he's the one that created this for us. After this, you would then receive an email with all of those forms attached to the email, and it would be pre-filled out for the contract that was typed into that slot. All right, here's what you do with that when you get it. You go back to your project and you go to the F.Forms library. In here, click the library and then click Open with Explorer. What that does is opens this SharePoint library up in the format of a regular Windows Explorer form, a Windows Explorer window, which is a really neat tool for doing a lot of things that we have to do on these sites. Once you have that window open, you go and get the email that you received when that application ran, and voila, there are all the forms. Right here, what you do is you right-click the forms, and then you say select all, and then you right click again and say copy. And then you right click inside of that window that you opened and paste them. And I want to tell you right now, the magic of video editing makes this work pretty quickly. But in real time, this probably takes about 5 minutes to upload all those forms, because it creates a lot of forms. So that's what it looks like when it's put in the folder. Then simply just close this window and then refresh your browser, and boom, there's your documents in your folder. And these are all pre-filled, and if you pull one of them up, I have a favorite one called Controlling Items of Work that I use all the time when I'm talking to people about this. And this is what the form looks like. It has the number pre-filled in and the contract number. So all you have to do is fill out the rest of it and submit it. Okay. The next subject is kind of a revisit on the pre-filled forms, because that's kind of a wrap your head around kind of thing. So we exit those behind the firewall. They get emailed to the requester or to the site. You can send it to yourself or have previously set the email on the site and send it directly to the site. And another thing that we didn't talk about before is that if your project requires a form that's not in the list that you receive, you can go to the Forms and Procedures page and pull that form out, pre-fill it yourself, and take it and put it in that f.forms library on your project. It would be the same thing. And then you'd be able to use it on your project whenever you needed to. Okay. The next topic, signing documents. And let me tell you one thing, this is a prickly subject. Every time you get something figured out, one of the developers of a document signing tool that you're using puts out a change, and all of a sudden it doesn't work like you did a week ago. But anyway, I'm going to try to demonstrate for you how to sign a document and how that works. And for this example, we already talked about how we identified what we thought were the most frequently used forms. We put the predetermined signature blocks on there to allow for digital signing, and we recognize that some of the forms have multiple blocks, and we, through experimentation, have created forms that allow this by blocking sections after they've been signed off on, so that the next person signing can't change a previous section. An example of that one would be a supplemental agreement form. There's, you can use more than one tool to sign these. There's Bluebeam VU, which is the free PDF reader from Bluebeam. There's also Adobe Reader DC, which is a free reader from Adobe. One thing we've been discovering is that when you mix, if you sign one with a Bluebeam and then sign another one with sign the second piece of one with Adobe Reader, sometimes it causes problems because it invalidates the previous signature or something. It's difficult to work with. But if we try to gear ourselves to work with one platform and just use that platform for everything, we'll probably be better off. But we're going to demonstrate both of these for you. Here's an example of signing a first level signature on a form using Bluebeam VU. So you open the thing with Bluebeam and you fill out the sections you need to fill out. Okay, in Bluebeam, let me pause right there. On the signature block, and when you're using Bluebeam, when you left click the block, it brings up this signing dialog like you're seeing on the screen. In Adobe, you do the opposite. You do a right click to bring up that dialog. And the dialog's different in Adobe anyway, but it gets the same thing done in any case. In this example also, because we're not doing the second level yet, we want to certify this document. The person that signs the first level is doing a certification up here. See that document certification? And they're agreeing to specified portions of the document. So this is how you would do this. This is what the contractor would do. So they would select the proper dialog and then click OK to sign the document. If you're signing a single document, there's really no need to rename it. You could actually overlay the document and replace it, because just for this example, I'm saving it with different names for different levels just to show you how it works. But you could say, you click the same document name and say save and say overwrite the document. All right. So in this one, I'm saying signed with Bluebeam level 1 or something. And when you save it, boom, it puts the signature there. That signature that I'm using here is one that I created myself. And if you tried to use one like this, the recipient of this document wouldn't be able to validate that, because this signature that I create myself is only good on the PC that I created on. So if I'm trying to sign something officially and use a self-created signature, the person that receives it's going to kick it back because say I can't validate this signature. So anyway, when you float over that signature on your local machine, it says it's valid and the document's been certified. Now, the second level of that same document, let's look at that. And this one I'm going to use a real signature to show you the difference. So I'm going to open up the one I just created with Bluebeam, scroll down and fill out the project engineer's portion of the form, and then sign. And in this case, I'm going to select, I'm approving the document. All right, so when I complete the signing of this one, I'm going to also create a different file, but realize you can just replace the file you're editing and it'll just replace it. This one prompts me for a password, and this is the password on your digital certificate that you should be the only one that knows it. All right, that's signed. That certificate should be valid, and that's a completed document. All right, the same thing you can do with DC, but it acts differently. Let's go through it, and I'm going to go a little bit faster on this one. I'll let the video roll. All right, we're opening with Adobe Reader, and we're going to sign it. Adobe automatically recognizes that there's different groups or sections on a form, and you don't have to specify that you're only approving, certifying it and then approving. There's some advantages to that, and there's some disadvantages when you try to mix Adobe and VU together. And then you sign it. I picked Goober again on this one as the first signer, and signed with Adobe level 1. Then the next video is the second level signer for that same form using Adobe Reader. He opens up level 1. He goes to the section he wants to fill out, puts his information in, right clicks the signature block, and puts his signature in. Level 2, and save. Grant. Put your password in, and there you go. You have 2 valid signatures on 2 different sections. Okay. Now I know that's a deep subject. Everybody just kind of take a deep breath. You can also create a signature block on the fly. And by doing that, I'm saying that let's say that a contractor wanted to do a special letter, that there's no form or no preset form letter that he can use. So he just creates a letter in Word and puts a signature on it and submits it. And that would work like this. Word acts completely different than all of the other things that you use to sign with. When you sign a Word document, it saves it automatically. It don't give you a choice of what to name it. It's replacing whatever you're working on. So you insert a signature box. Since a signature box in Word it comes in as an image, a picture. What you want to do is edit the properties of the picture and change the location such that the properties of the picture flow with the words, so you can move it around, because the default for Word is to anchor it to the top of the page like you see there. So here's what you do there. So you would click the properties of the thing and change the layouts, what I meant to say. All right. Once you change the layout, you can take that signature line and slide it down to where the signer would sign, and there you go. And then when you sign that box, I saved it first. When you sign that box, Word will automatically save the document. So there you go. So now it's signed and saved all at the same time. Excel works that same way. Anything that's Microsoft products works that way. Uploading documents. Like what we've already talked about, SharePoint is really dynamic. You can do a lot of things with it. You can, to get documents into the document library, you can upload them, you can email them to the site, you can drag and drop from your desktop or from a folder that you have open. What we've learned by, I think District 2 reported this, is that contractors really prefer the email to site feature to all the others, which is great, because what they can do is gather a whole bunch of submittals in an email that they need to send. I mean, and send them directly to the project site, and they'll all go at one time, just like you saw how we put the pre-filled forms into that library. A contractor could submit all of his weekly submittals in a single email if he wanted to. Or he could submit them separately, whatever he wants to do. But to upload a document to a site, this is how it would work. So you open up the project documents library, and you have another folder open on the left there with a document that you want to upload. So you check the one that you want to upload and open it and say OK, and it uploads it to that document library. This dialog is for those that know what they're doing. For example, I'm a CEI project administrator, and I'm uploading a document that I need to put into the document library, and I know exactly what that document is. I would go in and pull this drop down right here and classify the description of the document and then save it. And this has a cascading effect of doing particular workflows and other things that occur whenever you put a description in on the document. Some of the methodologies for which that works, I mean, there's logical reasons for doing things in a certain fashion that the CPR Group is currently evaluating, and as time goes on, how this document influx occurs will eventually evolve to the point where everybody's comfortable with it. This is another kind of a prickly area that we all need to focus on and come to a good resolution of how to use it. I'm going to skip that step at this time just to show you that that's how you upload documents. What would really happen here is if you have somebody in the contractor document reviewer group, since this document was uploaded to the library and nobody put a description on it, it's going to notify somebody that there's a new document that needs to be described. So the project administrators would get noticed that there's a new document to handle. The next option is emailing to the project site. And let's say I'm a contractor and I want to send a document to my project. This is what it would work like. You create the email. You put in the email address for the project site. Okay. Then you create the attachment. And it puts it in the email. Then you simply hit send and it sends it to the file, sends it to the project. Okay. Dragging and dropping. Here is an example of dragging a document from your desktop or from a folder right into the project site. Boom, there you go. That's as simple as you can get it right there. The next topic is how the EDMS automation process works. And this is another one of those topics that I think we will probably do more detail in, but this is the overall view of it. What we have designed is on every project, there's what's called a metadata source list. The metadata source list is a replication of the EDMS reference guide that you go to and find where documents should be classified. And if you look at this, you'll see, for example, a controlling items of work document is classified in the group daily diary and in the type engineer weekly summary daily report of construction. So in the metadata source list, we've tried to put all this possible samples that might come in, the examples of documents that would come into a project. There may be things that we did not get put in the list. So if you ever encounter those, you need to immediately send an email to that CPR group that there's a document that you received that's not in the drop-down list, and we will update the drop-down list so that it will be there. In other words, like I said, this is an evolving process, and having the metadata source list, you only have to make one decision about a document, and that is, what is the description of this document? What is it? If you make that decision correctly, the EDMS information is all filled out for you automatically. And here's an example of that. So we have a document that's been sent up to the document library. Now we're going to put a document description on it. The drop-down includes a list of everything that it could be. And this is a jumping list, so if you start typing job, it'll bring up the things that begin with job. So if you select that and you save it, the information is automatically looked up from that reference table, and the EDMS information is put with that document forevermore there. As you can see, by what we requested, it put in the proper information for EDMS. That's important to understand when we talk about the next things that we're going to talk about. When let's look at the EDMS automation process as a whole. Okay, documents come into a project by the methods that we've already talked about, and they're attributed based on selecting the document description. When the document description picks out the proper EDMS information and puts the attributes with the document, there's also a final checkbox that says ready for EDMS on the document attributes. And I'll show you that right after we talk about this diagram. When the project staff check the box that says this is ready for EDMS, a process kicks off and moves a copy of that document over to your district electronic document library. Okay. At that point, there's a process running that runs every so many minutes. Well, I'm sorry, this one runs every night. So this is a nightly run, so that if something hits this library during the day, the next day it should be showing up in EDMS. All right, so when a document comes to the district electronic documents library, another process picks it up and moves it to FTP on Parson Brinkerhoff's side. Okay, and I'll explain why that has to be in just a minute. There's also a process running on the FDOT server, which is inside of our firewall, that's looking in this FTP site and saying, do I have any new documents I need to import? And when the site says yes, here's a whole bunch of them that you need to put in EDMS. This process then takes the information, and there's an import program that runs on the EDMS servers in the district that will read the information and the documents and load them into the EDMS document storage area. Once that occurs, a log file that indicates what happened with the EDMS document number in it is sent back to the district, this site here. And if there's any of the documents that had anything wrong with them, there would be an error code in this log that goes back to the district that indicates that the document didn't get stored. There's something wrong here. You can go back to this log and get those EDMS document numbers that were created when they got sent and put those into your project document attribution information. We're trying to work on an automated process for making that happen as well. This is how you do the check ready for EDMS. It's just another field on the document library for a particular document. So you go to the document library and find the document that you want to check ready for EDMS. Actually, I'm switching to an EDMS view at this point, and it changes how you're seeing the information for the project, for the documents. Notice that you have a ready for EDMS column here. If you go into the quick edit mode over here, you can still change these to yes, and you can actually change more than one document to yes during the quick edit mode. And for every one that you picked, it'll automatically kick off that move process that puts it over into the district site. One thing to talk about, and it's still being discussed by the CPR group, about when the QAQC process can occur. Presently, on the Turnpike, they do the QAQC process at the project solve level, so that they don't have to worry about going to Hummingbird and doing the archival process and the QA process. They do it all here, and then when the document is sent to EDMS, it's automatically archived when it hits the site. We're talking about doing that for all of our stuff, and it's still in the discussion with the CPR group as to how that's going to be handled. But my vote is to do it in Project Solve, so you don't have to do it but one place. Okay, what happens when the project's completely done and you're ready to go do another project? Well, while a project's being built, everything resides in Project Solve, and all of the documents have been shipped over to EDMS, so the documents are in two places. When the contract is finally accepted, we go back to the project site and you check it to make sure all the documents have gone to EDMS and there's no outstanding issues there. And there's several steps that you might need to go through regarding RFIs and things like that, and we'll get into some detailed series about that in the future too. What happens is the site is just taken down and everything's gone for the Project Solve site for that contract. Everything's over in EDMS, so we're all covered. So it's like a temporary staging area while the contract's ongoing. Then when the contract's over, the site just disappears under the control of the project administrators. All right, because we at FDOT, we have approximately 500 ongoing contracts at all times. It varies up and down, sometimes 450, sometimes 515, but for the most part, on the average, we have 500 contracts running at the same time. So we have to pay for those sites when we're running them. They're not terribly expensive, but if you have one sitting there that you're not doing anything with, you'll be spending money for nothing. So we shut those sites down, and then here comes another one out of the letting process, and a new site's created for that project, and the whole cycle just continues to go. All right, at this time, I'm going to start looking at some of the questions that have been being submitted. All right, the first question, the plan states that all contracts executed after July 1st will be put into PSSP. Should this instead say letting? Yeah, everything that's let after July 1st should be put into PSSP. That's correct. The next question, full implementation, does that mean current jobs will be switching to PS and away from Hummingbird? No, that means that anything let after July 1st will start in Project Solve. Those contracts that are currently ongoing, you would finish those out like you're doing them now. The next question is, did not see local district material certification personnel. The list that I brought up for a district-wide provisioning example, it was only an example. Need to make sure that the district material people are in that list though for your district. So if you got concerns about that, send a note to that CPR email group, and the person for your district will probably get with you and respond. The next one is the district administrators the project administrator for the specific fin or a district person? Actually, the project administrator is a different person than the district administrator. So whoever the PA is on the project, it will be the one that's in the project administrator group for a particular site. Here's another one. Will Phase 72 contracts be administered through PSSP? That's a good question. And I'm not sure. Now, if it's a Phase 72 contract that's being run through Site Manager, that is a normal construction type Phase 72 and not an annual maintenance plan or something like that, it's possible that it could be put into PSSP, but that's something that we would need to address on a case-by-case basis. I'm sure you're probably talking about persons that are administering a project from an operations center where people work on construction projects and maintenance projects. So that kind of, it's like I said, it'll have to be a case-by-case basis. There's a question here about how do you upload multiple photos at a time. I'm not sure exactly how we would do that, but I think the photo is another library that exists on the project site. And it probably is possible to upload multiple photos. There's a library called Photos and then another library called Slideshow Photos. So you can selectively put them in either one that you want. All right. Another question. If we already created the account and did not put FDOT, how do we fix it? Don't worry about that. If we're fixing it as we see them up here. And that brings up a good point, because I want to express something else about that. There's a launch page that that you go to from the internet site to get the project solved. You saw in that if you go to construction internet site and go to programs and services and go down to e-construction and you see project solved, there's a launch page right there. And if a person has an account on the Active Directory at Parsons Brinkerhoff and they're not included in a group called all_FDOT, then they may not see a project on that list. So if you ever have that occur, just send a note to the CPR group and we can fix that person's account so that they can see all the projects in that list. I appreciate everybody coming and look forward to more webinars and more detailed about specific topics. And we have topics that are not even listed here yet that we're going to have to cover. So be looking forward to more webinars. And we even discussed doing like lunch and learn type webinars so that it won't take up your working part of your day. You can go grab a sandwich and then come in and watch a webinar while you're eating. Anyway, that's kind of the things we're talking about up here, is to get everybody in the know about what's going on. So again, thank everybody, and we're going to shut down the webinar at this time.